So next in what they said, we're going to talk about the Weather Underground, 2002, another document. Oh, and since you're
Oh,
doing that,
good.
Phil, do you remember buying me this? You gave me this for Christmas about,
I do
I
not
don't know,
remember.
10 years ago or something.
What is that? What
It's
is the way
it's about the Weather Underground, written by Ron Jacobs. It's like
Oh,
it's sort of an inside, well, not an inside account, because I don't think he was in the Weather Underground, but yeah, you
that
got it
looks
for me
good.
for Christmas. Well,
Okay, I got to look for that.
I'm actually going to try it again because, and I think I
Yeah.
mentioned this to you years ago. I wouldn't expect you to remember, but I think I did try it fairly soon after you bought it for me.
Yeah.
I think I made it about 40 or 50 pages in, and it just like I wasn't getting anything from it, and I just got lazy and
Yeah.
put it down. But I think I didn't know anything really about them at that time either. So maybe having a bit of knowledge up front might make it a little more interesting to me. I don't know. I mean, it's got a great look, and there's some really good illustrations and photos in it. So
I read one long book by, I think it's, and I went downstairs to see if I could bring it up and hold up the screen. It was called Days of Rage, and it wasn't just about the Weather Underground. It was just about that whole, starts with the Weather Ground, but it goes into all the groups, or maybe it started with the Black Panthers. It goes through all the groups in the late 60s, right through to, it was still going on in the mid to late 70s, like a Puerto Rican sort of version of the Weather Underground. And the thing that was amazing was just, and Stephen he lived this, he'll know it firsthand, just how frequent bombings were. Like they were so frequent that it was kind of like a page 7 story, you know? Like, you know how if there's a bombing today, obviously it's going to be 24 hours on CNN. They were almost daily events. Not just the Weather Underground. They were going on all over the place.
Interesting.
That was the VHS, by the way.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, I mean, in terms of stuff that happened in the general time frame, this would be 74 or so. It's when Patty Hearst was kidnapped from her apartment that her boyfriend had in Berkeley, and we lived on Telegraph Avenue, which is the big place where all the hippies hung out or whatever. So we used to think like we would look out our window. We were in an apartment looking down, and you know, Patty and the other Symbionese Liberation Army people might just be walking around for all we knew, because they were underground, right? But they could have walked around on Telegraph Avenue and just blended right in. So,
well, that was one of the points that one of the guys made, or maybe it was Bernadine Dorn made in the Weather Underground, that how you went underground was you just blended in, you know, and that, sorry, it was Ayers talking, Bill Ayers talking, and he said that he knew he passed people who should have recognized him, and they didn't.
Yeah,
they didn't think he'd be out and about.
So who wants to start off? Maybe just mention up front that, so I'm looking at the IMDb page. There's 2 directors for the movie, Sam Green and Bill Siegel. I had forgotten that Lily Taylor was the narrator.
Look at who the other narrator is. The one
there's more than one, right?
Yeah, look at the one right underneath her. You see that? Jim Lang?
Oh, yeah, I see his name there. Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Jim Lang,
look at the
local,
icon.
The dating game guy?
That's the icon beside it. I don't know if they've made a mistake or whether Jim Lang was actually one of the narrators. They've got the dating game right beside it.
It's possible,
you know what?
Because...
He says he's in the movie Confessions of a Dangerous Mind. And there's the dating game scenes in that movie, right?
Yes. But also Jim Lang, besides his national fame and international, I guess going up to Canada, he was a local figure down here. He was a disc jockey on an AM station, one of the like drive time kind of guys. And so we knew him from that.
Okay, that must be his function as narrator. Yeah. And they must use some audio.
He could have been a part of that and start people who thought dating game, but not. You know.
I haven't heard. I don't know what else those directors have done. I don't really know anything about them.
Yeah.
I watched a video with Green, I think it was. It was some years after the fact where he was talking about making it and this and that. And he seemed quite a fine fellow, and I felt kind of bad that I just moaned about him when I wrote about the movie, because you know, he explained, here's what I was trying to do, and he did a fine job. It's a fine movie.
Yeah.
I feel like whatever complaints I had it was kind of like Phil saying, well, I had a bad weekend. You know,
Yeah.
I come to the subject matter with a certain position, and I want it to be a certain way. And then, as I mentioned earlier, then there's Todd Gitlin. I guess I have a love-hate relationship with Todd Gitlin, but he frustrated me very much then, and he often does in later years. He was one of my.
The one thing I'll say about Todd Gitlin, and I do like the film a lot. I've seen it at least 3 times, but maybe 4. The stuff that Todd Gitlin says is kind of redundant in a way, because they come around, they grapple with that themselves. Maybe I'd have to go back and read what you wrote, Steve, but maybe you said something similar. I mean, they're grappling with the same questions. It's not like now, and they run a spectrum, Is it Naomi Jaffe? Says, sure, I'd do it all again. And then at the other end, you've got Flanagan, who just obviously is just torn apart by what he did. So Todd Gitlin, I'm someone who, this may disappoint you, Stephen. I basically agree in that I always think violence is bad. But at the same point, he does kind of come off as smug because, like I say, they are grappling with that themselves. It's not like they're, oh, this is just a wonderful thing. We're all heroes. Every one of them, with the possible, even Naomi Jaffe, obviously, was grappling with it in her own way.
I'm not sure that he was necessary, at least as well. On the other hand, as the guy who was president of SDS, wasn't immediately before the Weather Underground sort of took over, but he represents a certain place in the history of the group. And then it went in this other direction. Okay, he really does belong in there to at least once say, okay, this is what it used to be, and I'm not sure I like where it went. But
yeah, I thought of that too. He does have a right to be angry, and that he lost this thing that he founded, right? Did he actually found it?
No, I think he may have been a co-founder, but he was president.
Okay, first president, and he lost that, got it basically taken away out from under him. So yeah,
one of the things I'm thinking right now as we're talking is that this isn't the only place where he's expressed frustration with the direction that the New Left took with the Weather Underground, and then continuing, he has opinions about how the left operates up to this day. And again, we all have opinions, and there's no reason he's an informed opinion. But he's also very successful in his field. Whatever he was doing as a grad student or a student, he went on to become a professor. He went on to start the NASCOM program at Cal. He went on to, I forget where he went, but he went to another prestigious university. He's a highly regarded guy. He's written lots of books, and that doesn't mean he shouldn't have be crabby about certain things. But he's been on that level far more successful than anybody else in that movie. And so it's almost unfair to him that they present him like he's the crabby guy who lives next door and wants you to get off his lawn, It's better than that. Even as I wanted to strangle him.
It's interesting to me hearing you guys talk about this, because my reaction was quite different in some ways. Like, I thought the movie really, I wasn't crazy about the movie. I liked some parts of it. And when I actually flipped through it again tonight, I actually think I was just sort of a little bit, I think I had Phil's bad mood the night I watched it, and I watched it over 2 nights. So there was a little bit of that for him. But I remember the first hour, I just was thinking, God, this is just standard documentary. And then I think it did get a little better. However, my point was going to be where I differ from you guys, that one thing that kind of pisses me off a little bit about the movie is that I think it short shrifts, not necessarily Todd Gitlin is someone I can honestly say I mostly know from documentaries about the 60s. Like, he is the guy you trot out, right? It didn't have to be him, but my favorite scene in the movie, probably, it's one of the only things I jotted down about it, was they had a very brief scene of someone else, clearly from the movement, a woman. They must identify her. I didn't catch her name. She's literally in the movie for all of 20 seconds. And I thought it was a riveting little interview clip where she's like pissed off at the Weather Underground too. And she has a great quote. She says,
I remember the woman.
Says the cops couldn't have done a better job of destroying what we had. And to me, the movie does not to me, this movie would have been much better if it actually was a little bit more about that dialogue. And I have to say, like, and this is just, you can still enjoy a movie and find some people unlikable. I understand that, but I don't know, the two people who I just did not enjoy seeing them in present day. I thought, God, you're just like, you're really covering your tracks here. Was particularly Bernadine Dorn and Bill Ayers. I was interesting to watch, and
Yeah.
from a historical perspective, it was cool to see that. But something about, and I kind of blame the filmmakers a little bit. I mean, one thing I looked up after is that Bernadine Dorn said like absolutely horrible things about Manson, and she later tried to amend that by saying, "Oh, I was just being ironic," like, which is just her saying, yeah, like acknowledging that it was awful what she said. Like, she basically, at the time, and I'm sorry, like if you were that age and had that much intelligence at the time, I don't think you're going to say something that stupid about Manson. Like, she was basically saying, like, I don't want to try and paraphrase, but ultimately, like what a hero. Like, he really gave it to them, and it's like, I find them kind of creepy, and that's fine. And they're genuine, they've had a genuine impact on history and all that. So but I don't think the movie made very much attempt at all to have a dialogue. I actually think it was very lopsided in a certain way. And I found that one woman so riveting. It's like, I think they should have brought her in, maybe they should have got her in a contemporary setting or someone like that who was really pissed off about what these people did to the movement. Some of that has to do with my own politics, because I've always like thought, yeah, people like the Weather Underground, and I tie it in with Manson, and I tie it in with, a few other moments, that whole death of the 60s thing. These people kind of ruined it for everyone. Like, and it's a great topic to explore in a movie, but I felt it was a bit of a, we're going to revive these guys a little bit, and that kind of just bugged me a little bit watching it. I don't know.
I agree that both of them are, they're not likable. I don't know if it lets them off the hook. It doesn't, like, they don't question them, but at the same time, they sort of put them out there and, sort of give them enough rope to hang themselves. I know what you're saying about Dorn and the stuff she said about Manson, sort of insulting.
I mean, that's just one thing too. I'm not going to say that sums up who she is and what she did.
But she did say that stuff. Mark Rudd was interesting. He was someone who, again, seemed to be really grappling with it at the end, although they save it for kind of one shot. You didn't necessarily get that sense until right at the end. He had a little minute where he said how he thinks about it every day. And I don't know, what did you think, Stephen, about Mark Rudd?
I thought that was I was glad that he spoke honestly about where he is now, and as a kind of a balanced person who said, I do the same again, although they were cognizant of the problems of what they'd done, but they would still do it. And he was clearly of a different mind. And I was glad that they had both of those in the film. For me, the biggest problem is me. I mean, on some level, back when I used to write for a journal, every other article I wrote was X and me, because I was always writing about myself anyway. So I have a tendency to fall into solipsism in these moments. So I had such a romantic notion of all this stuff when I was a kid. Okay, in the late 60s, okay, I turned 15. Well, okay, since I got my big anniversary coming up tomorrow, my wife and I met in 60 in high school. And I romanticized this stuff. The Panthers, Weather Underground, even Patty Hearst, until the Paul Schrader movie, which really, I think, did a great job in the first half hour or so, just laying out, this was like a terrible thing for her. All these things excited me, even the stupid ones, like the Siemens Liberation Army. They were morons. Nonetheless, it excited me. The Panthers in particular.
Had an allure.
Speak a couple of times, man, he was dynamic. The point being that I need a movie that takes these people to task, because I don't do enough of it myself. And so I liked hearing what you said, like, oh, Bernadine Dorn, oh God, because man, I had a crush on her. And the first time I saw it, which was many years ago, I thought, he thinks she was like 50 then. I said, look at her, what kind of jeans does she have? She still looks great. I mean, that has nothing to do with what her politics were. My politics, I've never gone out and bombed anything. I'm not in that position, and yet I still maintain the romantic notion, and that's nonsense. So I need something that forces me to confront that. I don't know.
I understand that.
Yeah, so do I. That
I
makes
don't know.
sense.
But certainly now, Stephen, you would agree. I think all historians agree that the Panthers were basically a cause for good, especially all the community work they did. And the Weather Underground is just, even though they come along at the same moment, it's funny, even the film kind of showed that the Panthers disowned them too, right?
And that ties in with what I was saying. I thought they short shrifted that a little bit. They give you a little teaser at one point that the Panthers thought they were ridiculous.
Yeah.
Play that out a little bit. Like, I really like, they were interviewing, it was Kathleen Cleaver, I think, right? She was
I should have mentioned her. I should have mentioned her when we were talking about the Town Bloody Hall. I said, well, what black women should be in the film, and I mentioned, of course, Angela Davis. I was groping around for names. I should have mentioned Kathleen Cleaver.
But that was another thing. That's a really interesting part of the story. Like, because I don't want to be dismissive of the Weather Underground, and I can imagine being in the frame. And I'm sure when I was younger, I probably would have, like, the first time I would have heard about radical groups like that, I would have definitely felt the allure. And they're smart people too. Like, they're not idiots out there doing this stuff. They put some thought into it. So I get the allure, but I did want to hear some pushback, and the Panther part would have been amazing. I mean, to me, that would have been because I'm sure there was one scene where I think it was Mark Rudd, or maybe, no, I think it was the guy who's ended up doing the life sentence in prison.
Oh,
and
Gilbert.
Yeah, and there was one riveting scene, I thought, where and it was from the 60s, and he was giving a speech somewhere, and he was with, like, a Black Panther or something, and it was very powerful, actually. So that dynamic would have been so interesting to explore, right? Like, what did this Black Panther, who were doing a lot of community work, like, there must have been, I'm sure a lot of them thought these white assholes are just, gonna hurt the cause for everyone, kind of thing. That some of them probably liked them too, right?
There, so, because I don't know all the books and movies, but it would be a good topic to compare the two groups. The Weather Underground, they had what I felt to be valid frustrations, and then it went in the direction of blowing shit up. So, okay.
Yeah.
The Panthers, they were about self-protection. They armed themselves. I don't know how much you guys know this, but they went up to the state capitol with their guns out and said, hey, and they followed the police around on patrols and made sure they weren't doing anything. And of course, their most famous thing was their free food program for the kids. Now, that doesn't mean that everything was good. Some of them didn't turn out to be as good as we'd like, well, I would like. But it's also true that J. Edgar Hoover made sure that they got, and the Weather Underground kind of fucked themselves, it seems to me. Maybe the Panthers would have gone the same direction, but they didn't have time to go in their own direction in that sense, because the FBI was able to sow the seeds of discontent within the group. Also, I'm thinking of this now. Bobby Seale's still around. At one point he ran for mayor of Oakland and came in second. They have a good reputation here, and he's my son's idol, Bobby Seale.
Wow.
I remember also there was one time he wrote a book. It was called Barbecuing with Bobby, and it was all about his barbecue recipes and stuff. And I remember seeing an interview. It's like, Bobby, what you doing? Thinking he was going to tell him about what the judge did in Chicago, whatever. And he says, I don't know about you, but I'm barbecuing.
Wow.
And he didn't say it like he's gotten too old or he's sold out. He was just saying, right now, I'm barbecuing. And I was thinking, if Bobby wants to barbecue, I'm there.
I was looking up some of them. It's amazing, from people that were participants at the time. It was either, I get the sense, either they died at the time or they went on to lead long lives. Like, almost everyone I looked up was still alive. Kathleen Cleaver is still alive. Dorn and Bill Ayers are still alive. Mark Rudd is still alive. Naomi Jaffe's still alive. they just, once they got past that, they just managed to live long lives and still at it. I want to mention a couple things, make sure we have enough time to get into two subjects. One would be just that this film came out in 2002, and 6 years later, Bill Ayers became a story in the 2008 election. And the other thing, and I don't know if this is way off base, but just comparing the Weather Underground to the lunatics that stormed the Capitol on January 6th. You know, are there points of similarity?
Yeah.
Are they totally different in that the Weather Underground started with an honorable cause, protesting, you know, a terrible war? But do they end up overlapping more than we care to admit? I don't know. Just throwing this stuff out.
I think so in some ways. Like, I mean, you and I, Phil, have talked a little bit about this, and I think we talk, you know, it comes up a little bit in our book on Trump and all the sort of precursors that led to Trump, mostly cultural, etc. But I think, like, you don't have to collude politically necessarily to kind of be like the exact same thing. And I'm going to use a personal example here. Like, Stephen won't know about this, but one of my best friends for 30 years went totally pro-Trump. And you know, we're still sort of friends. It's up in the air if we still have a strong friendship or not, but we haven't written it off yet. But for 4 or 5 years, I was engaged in a series of sort of email dialogues with him. And the one thing I always found so sort of interesting and kind of depressing at the same time was that he and the people he was into and all that, they were all the ones who had kind of like were having the fun. And like, it's almost like they grabbed the spirit of the, what's the group, the Ken Kesey group, the Mary Prank. It's almost like there was very much like and I noticed that just even about stuff like I would read about the alt-right and stuff. It's almost like they grabbed that, you know, it sounds a corny phrase, but that rock and roll mantle or something almost, and they ran with it. And like, and you know, they were the ones in the last 4 years that were kind of having the fun and like doing this stuff with Leah and really believing that, you know, we're finally going to stick it to the man. Like, you know, people shouldn't assume that everyone who's like pro-Trump, especially like the followers and stuff, that they just like, they obviously they do have a cause. They think they want to, like, you know, bring down these people who have, you know, been stealing from people for years, blah, blah, blah. Like, they do actually believe that. I think it's delusional what they believe and all that.
Well, that was Todd Gitlin's
and
point,
I think that's part of it. I think I think I see it as, I don't know if I want to say a continuum, but there's an overlap for sure in what that's my feeling about it. You can't just look at one is left and one is right, so they're totally different. It's like, no, you can be the exact same thing if you're far left or far right, as far as I'm concerned. So,
well, that was Todd Gitlin's point, whether you like him or not, that, you know, people that do stuff, crazy stuff, they always believe in the righteousness of what they're doing, right?
One of the weathermen, I think, said that too. Is this something toward, it was, you know, in one of the reflective moments towards the end. And I did like that for a couple of the guys, by the way. And I think, I can't remember if it's Mark Rudd or the other guy. And he said, you know, when you believe that you have the moral high ground,
right,
it's a very dangerous thing to believe, and you can end up doing a lot of bad shit.
Yeah.
One other point I wanted to make, someone mentioned about, just use the phrase like blowing shit up or something. That was another like Ayers thing that just kind of, I think it was Ayers, I don't think it was Bernadine Doran, that just kind of drove me nuts. Just like at one point, and he's factually, what he's saying was correct. He said, you know, but we never actually killed anyone through our actions. And I'm like, yeah, you never did, and you're lucky you didn't, but you certainly
But they did.
You certainly, okay, well, that too.
After the first time.
Right, after the first time. And they sort of skimmed that over a little bit, I thought. But also, it's like, yeah, you didn't, but don't use that as justification unless you really still believe those are good tactics. Like, some people might legitimately believe that. I'm not gonna, you know, I'm not here to, you know, go over that. But you can't kind of have it both ways. Like, I just found there was something I didn't like about the way he sort of said that, and that the filmmaker kind of let him get away with saying that, almost like, well, nothing bad happened anyway. It's like, you can do a lot of terrible things and the consequences might not be as dire as could have been, but it's still a terrible thing. If you believe that blowing buildings up in public spaces is a terrible thing, and I do, yeah, you're lucky you didn't. And you took the precautionary measures, I get it, but I'm very unradical, I guess, like when it comes down to it.
You guys caught Dustin Hoffman flash by, right?
Yes,
The first
but I
bombing in
forget
New
where
York.
though. Oh yeah,
The
okay.
bombing of the townhouse. He lived next door. I think he was literally the townhouse next door. How did you feel, Stephen, when I'm sure you hadn't thought about Bill Ayers for years when he turned up in the 2000s? Well, I guess you saw the film when it came out, but when he turned up in 2008, did you find that kind of disorienting at the least?
I mean, unlike Sarah Palin, I thought that was Barack Obama was a good guy. So I guess I would say that. And there's something, I don't know, charming isn't the word, but when you see these guys and gals, they're in their 50s and their 60s and their 70s, and they still have some kind of fire. I think that's nice. I think that I prefer that to, oh, leave me alone, I'm gardening or whatever. But also there are those, there are the Noam Chomsky say, Studs Terkel, been dead for a while, but there are people who are way old and still stick to a certain ethical position and don't decide, okay, I've done my work. The older I get, the more I think, not that I've done my work, but that I'm tired. And I'm sure these guys and other people like them are just as tired. Our representative in the House here, Barbara Lee, is pushing 80. When I see the Nancy, Dianne Feinstein, when I see people like that, I think you're too old. I don't like her anyway, but you're too old. But then I see Barbara Lee, who's not that much younger, but she's still got the fire. She's still there for the people, and we still keep voting in for that reason. So, having said all of that, Bill Ayers, I mean, he's kind of irrelevant at this point. Even though I'm glad, unlike some of what you guys said, I'm happy that him and Bernadine are still cooking, whatever. But yeah, you don't think about him that much anymore, I suppose.
I've always wondered, I suspect that between what Obama said about how involved he was with Bill Ayers and what Sarah Palin said, the truth is somewhere in between, much closer to Obama's version of the story. Palling around is ridiculous. I think they were probably a little closer than Obama probably wanted to let on, because he's got to manage a political campaign.
Yeah.
But
yeah.
I don't think they were deeply involved. Not knowing anything about it, I think they knew each other, and maybe there was some involvement early on, but nothing near what Palin said.
Since I vented about the movie, I do wonder if I watched it again, if I'd probably have a slightly more positive reaction to it. I think my reaction to it was a lot like kind of emotional or something, and it just wasn't, well, that's how you do react to movies, but I don't know. Like, did you think it was a particularly skillful movie or well made as a documentary? Like, quite often I was thinking this could be a PBS documentary, which is fine. That's not okay. Yeah.
It's talking heads plus film, right? Film footage. Just didn't do anything to do. I wanted to mention the music. They use that Aphex, that Aphex Twin, Scott?
I saw that.
And then that's right at the end. There might be in other parts too. And then they follow that up with a beautiful piece of music right when the end credits start. But
I thought that was Sonic Youth at first. It sounded like Sonic. No, I don't know if it. No, I don't know if it is. I don't know if it is.
I thought the soundtrack.
Then that would be them. It sounds like something off around their Bad Moon Rising period or something like that. They used to do these long extended, just sort of like they keep playing a chord over and over kind of thing. It was really pretty.
It sounds like Sonic Youth.
Yeah.
And then there was this weird little bit of electronic bit that kept recurring all through the film that I liked. That it sort of gave this sense of the weirdness of the events and the whole time. You'd recognize a little bit of music I'm talking about if you were to hear it. But no, to answer your original question, I don't think it did anything different technically. I just was engaged by the subject matter.
Yeah. And that's valid for a documentary. I mean, you don't always have to do something unusual like Sarah Polley sort of
I was
did,
just going to say,
so.
it's not nearly as ambitious as the Sarah Polley, that's for sure.